I would like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Ascension Parish Council on March 18th. We are in the Gonzales Courthouse, and it feels more like a normal meeting than it's felt in a while. I think that's the first time in a year that I've made my way around the audience and been able to feel comfortable to say hello to people, and I think they felt comfortable having somebody come say hello to them. So it's wonderful to be back in a more normal environment. We thank you for being masked and for washing your hands and for staying as much as possible socially distanced, and we're grateful for that. We are having a little rise in our numbers in Ascension Parish, so we do need to be careful. Let's don't make any mistakes. At this time, the meeting is certainly called to order, and I will ask Coach Thomas if he will please lead us in the invocation and follow that by the pledge.
Let us bow our heads. Most Heavenly Father, as we come at this hour in the evening, we want to say thank you, Lord, for the many blessings you bestowed upon each of us. Father, as we bow at this hour, Lord, I want to thank you, Lord, for those that are here tonight. We ask, Lord, that you give us direction in guiding this parish of Ascension forward. I pray, Lord, that you bless my brother Corey as he comes back. Bless Mr. Martin as we comes back tonight, visiting us tonight. And I'm praying for my brother Aaron Lawler. Bless him and his family. We bless, Lord, that you bless this parish of Ascension, and we thank you, Lord. And Lord God, as we leave this place tonight, I'm asking that you bless each and every person under the sound of my voice to make it home safe and sound. We ask this in Jesus' name, and we all say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, Mr. Lawler is not with us tonight. He is ill. There are no chairs additions. There are some housekeeping items that we will do. We are going to be passing on item 6A, which is an executive session. That has been rescheduled for April the 15th. It's a month from now. And we will also be passing on item 7F. And we will be moving item 7X to item 9N. There is a public comment period on any item on the agenda tonight. If you have a desire to make a comment, please fill out a red or a green card, get that to the secretary. She will get it to Mr. Turner, and we will hear you at the time that it is designated for you to speak. Cinnamon, you need
I think you forgot an item that you're supposed to be passing on 11B.
Excuse me, got one more. 11B is also be passing. Now, thank you so much, Cinnamon.
Is that B as in boy?
B as in boy.
B.
Okay. So that's 6A, 7F, 11B, and 7X is moving to 9N. Thank you. At this time, we are at item number 5, which is our presentations. 5A is a proclamation to proclaim March Red Cross Month in Ascension Parish. Mr. Martin McConnell is going to handle that.
Madam Chair, and we have, thank you. We have representatives from the American Red Cross, Mr. Reggie Mullins, and Mr. Eddie Fuller is here to join us. I'm going to hand you this proclamation while I read it aloud. If I may, Madam. Whereas the Louisiana Red Cross volunteers aid needy families during emergencies such as hurricanes, home fires, tornadoes, and winter storms, and whereas their dedication touches thousands of Louisianians' lives each year as they carry out the Red Cross's 140-year mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering, and whereas during the current coronavirus pandemic, American Red Cross blood donors rolled up their sleeves to give blood as our country faced a severe blood shortage. And whereas last year, Louisiana volunteers responded to more than 1,300 home fires and educated more than 4,400 youngsters on preparedness through the Pillowcase Project. And whereas in the 2020 hurricane season, more than 3,200 American Red Cross volunteers came to Louisiana and worked tirelessly to help displaced Louisianans. And whereas they provided more than 928,400 overnight stays, they served more than 2 million meals and snacks, and they distributed more than 230,000 emergency relief items. They found solutions for nearly 60,000 Louisiana families. They provided emergency financial assistance to nearly 10,000 households. And whereas Red Cross volunteers also support Louisiana families in other ways, they train nearly 26,000 individuals in critical life-saving and sustaining skills such as first aid, CPR, AED, and water safety. And the Service to Armed Forces Hero Care Network had 8,900 separate cases related to military pre-deployment, deployment, and demobilization, emergency communication services, financial assistance programs, reintegration, and veteran services. And whereas in the spirit of American Red Cross founder Clara Barton, the Parish of Ascension dedicates this month to all those who continue to advance Clara Barton's noble legacy and ask others to join in the commitment to care for people in need. Their life-saving work is vital to strengthening our community's resilience, something the Parish of Ascension could not achieve alone. We are thankful for the American Red Cross partnership with the United Way, Louisiana Office of Emergency Preparedness, with local officials, and endless community partners who work together to serve Louisiana residents. Now, therefore, Clint Quintmaw, the president of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by virtue of the authority vested in him, does hereby proclaim March of 2021 as American Red Cross Month in Ascension Parish, and he encourages all Americans to reach out and support its humanitarian mission. So, please, Mr. Reggie Mullins.
Good afternoon. Along with Mr. Eddie Fuller, who like myself is a member of the local board of directors for the American Red Cross. Our chapter represents 22 parishes. As far down as St. James, where I was last night, up to St. Helena, and thank you all the way to the Texas line. We appreciate your recognition of the hardworking men and women in the Red Cross. I appreciate Martin reading that, even though I know it's pretty long-winded. Thank you. The Red Cross works hard to help. We like to say in times of natural disaster, help alleviate human suffering through the power of volunteers and the generosity of donors. So thank you, the people that do that hard work. Appreciate your recognition. We really thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You.
If I could ask the council members to join us, please. You're fine, we're going to be distant.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, Eddie.
Usually the best response before he talks to you.
Careful, guys, we may have an earthquake.
That's why I brought the soup.
There you go.
All right, I believe I can see everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
So I have one more bit of housekeeping I want to do before we move into the consent agenda. For all the years that I've been a member of the Ascension Parish Council, we have been served by an attorney who helped us through thick and thin, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. O'Neill Parrington for his service to the Parish of Ascension for the last many years. And I want to announce that in Mr. Parrington's former seat is a new member of the parish legal team, Mr. Kenneth Dupatti. And we want to welcome Kenneth and promise him that we're going to treat him just like we did O'Neill. It's going to be tough.
We'll treat you better, Kenneth.
You better, Kenneth.
Thank you both so much. O'Neill, thank you very much.
All right, O'Neill. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Thank you.
Real quick, Madam Chair. Housekeeping with the agenda. We moved 7X to 9 N?
Yes. That's what I'm told.
Isn't 7X the same as 9, 11? 11, oh my God. 9, L.
I think it is.
Yeah, it is a repeat.
Can we just remove 7X altogether and leave 9L as is?
Yes, that's probably the correct thing to do. Thank you for catching that.
9, 11.
All right. Okay. Cinnamon, if you would like to go into this consent agenda, please.
Letter addendum, Grace Abear Curtis Architects Courthouse Council Chambers additions, $13,829.28 for increased construction value for courthouse, and $59,207.50 for increased for council chambers and council chamber foundation. Total of addendum, $73,036.78. Amendment number 1 to master contract for professional services for preventative maintenance with Total Energy Solutions Company, LLC, to include 100 kilowatt Generac generator, 15W40, model 9538381100, contract not to exceed amount of $41,450. Amendment number 1, H&O Grounds for an additional scope of work for the addition of Worthy Road and Irma Boulevard Parish buildings for an additional amount of $48,450. Request for $75,000 for the second year of a 3-year agreement with ESRI Environmental Systems Research Institute for Small Government Term Enterprise License Agreement. Amendment number 1 to contract with Tyler Technologies to include EAM, Parks and Rec 311, and My Civic software, as well as the implementation and training services that accompany the modules. Total amount of $530,759. $308,180 payable in 2021, and $222,579 payable in 2022. Approval of change order number 1, Blunt General Contractors, LLC, new substation number 51, Galvez Lake, decrease in the amount of $3,512.98. I'm sorry, we passed on that item. Approval of change order number 1, Delcon LLC, AP Jail, Muffin Monster, discover of damaged auger, must remove, blast, take apart, re-drill, tap, and install new brushes for an additional amount of $10,145, and to extend substantial completion date to February 26, 2021. Approval of change order number 4, Sienna Construction LLC, increase of 7 days and decrease in contract amount of $9,410.30. Certificate of substantial completion, Sienna Construction LLC, renovations to women's dorm at Ascension Parish Jail. Certificate of substantial completion, Seco Mechanical, replacement of existing 90-ton chiller at the Lamar Dixon facility. Certificate of substantial completion, Corporate Mechanical Contractors, Inc., CMC, replace 125-ton compressor on York chiller for Jim Trademark Building. Certificate of substantial completion, Acadian Renovations Ltd., Public Utility Statewide Generator 5% Initiative, FEMA grant, installation of new 1,000 kilowatt generator at Lamar Dixon 4-H building and all associated gear, such as the new 4MDP panel, a new EXPD panel, along with installing 2 owner-provided 1,200 AMO 4-pole NEMA 3R ATS. Certificate of substantial completion, Acadian Renovations Limited, Public Utilities Statewide Generator 5% Initiative, FEMA grant, installation of a 50 kilowatt generator at Country Ridge Treatment Plant. Certificate of substantial completion, Acadian Renovations Limited, Public Utilities Statewide Generator 5% Initiative, FEMA grant, installation of a new 50 kilowatt generator at Country Ridge Lift Station. Certificate of substantial completion, Acadian Renovations Limited, Public Utilities Statewide Generator 5% Initiative, FEMA grant, installation of new 100 kilowatt generator at Hope Villa Treatment Plant. Certificate of substantial completion, Acadian Renovations Limited, Public Utilities Statewide Generator 5% Initiative, FEMA grant, installation of new 50 kilowatt generator at Hope Villa Lift Station. Certificate of substantial completion, Acadian Renovations Limited, Public Utilities Statewide Generator 5% Initiative FEMA Grant installation of new 150-amp pin and sleeve at Gidry Lift Station with mounting box along with 200-amp two-pole ATS. Request for design services for Phase 1 HVAC system upgrade for Ascension Parish Jail. Approval to enter into contract with Chem Spray South for the mowing of roadside ditches not to exceed $140,000. Cooperative endeavor agreement between Ascension Parish and Louisiana Department of Veterans Affairs for housing and cost to maintain and operate service offices in the amount of $24,917 for 2021. Approval of project Freezer Blue Runner Foods, Inc. for participation in the ITEP under the Post-Executive Order 2018 rules. Approval of fiscal agent contract amendment. Bid quote items to accept lowest responsive bid quote as follows. Annual material bid for Type HP High Performance Cold Mix Material Resources, Inc. Supply and delivery of liquid CL2 for water treatment bid. DPC Enterprises, $1,024 per container.
Thank you very much, Cinnamon. Does anyone desire to remove any item from the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove an item. I just have a question about item G.
Which one, dear? G?
G.
Okay, we will do that. We will take that up at the end of item 9. So that'll be 9M, N. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
A motion by Councilman Melanson, a second by Councilman Turner to approve the consent agenda. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Madam Chair, I do have one more question. Even though we pulled item 6A, do we still have to allow public hearing if it was on the agenda?
No,
Okay, I'm just asking for housekeeping purposes.
I understand. No. Okay. At this time, the parish president's report.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Members of the council, thank you. I promise this week not to start off with a joke, even though the fact that Clint and Aaron are not here, it's hard to pass up. But anyway, the parish is still working with the Louisiana National Guard to offer free COVID-19 testing at locations throughout the parish. Last week, we're at Stevens Park, and this week, they're at Sotil Pavilion in Donzeville. Next week, there will be at Jackie Robinson Park in Geismar, and then on Easter week, testing will be at Dutchtown Library. Information on our website is on our website Facebook pages. The parish president wants to remind everyone that testing is one of the best ways we can work together to defeat the virus and come out of this pandemic. The parish is continuing to follow the governor's guidelines to control the virus, but according to most recent reports, and as the chairwoman mentioned earlier, Ascension Parish's positivity rate is creeping upward. We can only defeat this virus if everyone works together. Please urge your constituents to wear face masks in public, wash their hands, remain socially distanced, and get vaccinated as soon as they are eligible. The health unit has the Moderna vaccine available. Call them to get on the list, please. The state treasurer's office is administering a rental assistance program. The funding was included in the last relief legislation passed by Congress. People can go to lastaterent.com to find out if they are qualified. The Capital Region Planning Commission is working on a long-term vision for transportation in the region, which includes Ascension Parish. They are asking people to take their online survey to voice their opinions about how to address the future needs of traffic and transportation in the Capital Region. Finally, let's have a little fun. Most of us remember Rohan Davey, the former LSU star quarterback and two-time Super Bowl champion. Rohan has been working very closely with Mark Dixon, Kyle Rogers, and their staff to bring 7-on-7 football to Ascension Parish. The top high school football talents in the nation will be showcased, and this will be where everyone gets a chance to see the future college and NFL stars in action. Really great work by Kyle Rogers and his crew. And just on a personal note, I want to thank Kyle Rogers. He's one of our true leaders in the parish. The guy's always thinking of, we had a meeting the other day. He's like, John, I can't add any more weekends on the calendar. And so he's constantly thinking of new ways to bring in revenue with that space that he has. And so he's a great guy to have on staff, and we really appreciate him.
Thank you so much, John. Item 9, general business. A, that is the approval of the salary for the newly appointed registrar of voters. Chair would entertain a motion.
Motion.
Mr.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the salary. Salary is this, Mr., do you have the, Mr. Cagliari?
Yes,
do you have the stated salary?
91,500.
Thank you. So are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item B, approval of request for quote to accept the lowest responsive quote for Hillaryville wastewater treatment plant renovations, Delcon LLC. This was moved from the February 18th meeting to now. Yes, sir.
I was just going. I'd like to,
So move.
Have a motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert, a second by Mr. Melanson.
Questions?
I have questions for Mr. Ogeron.
Yes, sir.
Could you remind us as to what exactly we are, what renovations we're planning on doing at Hillaryville wastewater treatment?
Sure. This is for the second train of the treatment plant. As you recall, this is a CDBG grant that has a certain amount of capacity coming from all the connections. So in analyzing the amount of flow, the second train was needed. So in order so that, and I think that it was about 13 to 15,000 gallons per day we were shy. So this project allows us to do that. I want to say also that talking with the engineers, the initial cost was expected to be around 350 to 400,000. But with our group, we were able to get the actual coating at about 50,000, which you guys approved back in, I think it was on the agenda in September 17th of 2020, okay? So we were gonna move forward with this bid puts in the mechanical components to that same treatment system. It just allows you to put in the blowers and things that you need so that you actually can treat the waste. As I said, we initially started off with a high price. 53,000 is what we were able to get for the coating, and this is for 125,000. So we're substantially less than what was initially proposed by the engineer. So we are proud of the team, Dean and the rest of them, and that helped to do that. So this is just to meet the need of the CDBG grant to treat the waste that's expected to come into that area.
So we're expecting to spend 125,000.
I think it's 125,000 on this one. You already approved the 53, which the.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
So we're looking at 125 on that. And have we taken into account the fact that the parish is attempting to sell
Yes.
by April 24th vote our sewer systems?
Yes, the chairman of the utility committee.
yeah, if you don't mind, Chairwoman and
Please.
Mr. Ogeron. So apparently, on the appraisal, these upgrades were taken into consideration, and that extra 15,000 pounds of flow, the pipe that roughly $5.5 million worth of work we've done on it so far, the infrastructure, the pipe we have in the ground now has the ability to send more flow than the plant can actually handle. And so this will help us live up to our end of the deal that, it's X amount of gallons per day.
So it was part of the negotiations that took
Right.
place in getting
Right.
this.
My
model.
first question was, why spend another 120 grand on something we might not own?
Exactly.
And after doing some digging, it was appraised at X amount of gallons a day, and we just need to finish it.
Okay.
Mr. Robert?
So just to clarify, we're going to continue there's going to be continued wastewater treatment at that plant afterward?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, definitely.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we had a motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item C, a resolution to commit to budget the approximate estimate of 20% matching funds for projects accepted by the state, presently proposed for consideration by the Metropolitan Planning Commission. Aaron would have known that, all of the details on this. John, do you have the information on this?
I'm sorry, Chairwoman, I don't, but this, from what I understand, this is the routine agreement that we have with them.
Yes, I believe it is.
It's for the
Thank you.
Just to participate with
Motion, yeah,
the
it's
MPO.
just to
Yes, I have a motion by Mr. Ogeron,
Second.
a second by Mr. Mason. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. We depend on Aaron Lawler for transportation issues, no doubt. Item D, approval to authorize Recreation Director Michael King as an administrator for the Ascension Parish Recreation Facebook page.
Motion.
Have a motion by, who said that?
Second.
Mr. Wagasback.
Mr. Wagasback. I have a motion by Mr. Wagasback, a second by Mr. Ogeron. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. You want to say something, Mr. McConnell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to present Mr. King in case some of you have not yet met him. I know he has met the Recreation Committee, but this is your Director of Recreation.
Thank you, sir. We
Nice
appreciate
to
you
meet
very much.
Welcome.
Look forward to working with you.
What's your free throw percentage?
Awful.
Can't even measure.
Thank you so much. Please do us proud on Facebook.
Yeah.
Item E, a resolution to hereby request Parish President Clint Quintmall and the Parish Legal Counsel to take the necessary action to abate zoning violations on parcel number 5755200, parcel number 200009170, and parcel number 8595200. And I believe we are in litigation on this matter.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Ogeron, excuse me, Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ogeron. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item F, approval to relocate $200,000 from the Santa Maria Rec Center reconstruction budget to the ballpark lighting project in order to accept the lowest responsive bid. Mr. Compton.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us what's happening, Mr. Compton. Good evening.
Good evening. So we had put this project out to bid. It came in over budget, so we removed 2 of the fields at Stevens Park from the bid. We put it back out to bid, and it still came in over budget by about $150,000. So we don't foresee construction costs coming down at any point in the next 2 years, so we'd like to reallocate $200,000 from our Santa Maria Rec Center project to this, which is already budgeted, and in April, we're going to do a budget amendment to put that $200,000 back. This just enables us to accept the bid.
Motion, Mr.
I have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Mason. Any questions?
I
Mr.
I have one suggestion. I would like to encourage the Recreation Department, when searching for this $200,000, let's really look at, once the April 24th vote is completed and the public votes to transfer to sell our sewer, let's make sure we take the money from those proceeds and utilize that for recreation in Santa Maria. 'Cause I think the folks in Santa Maria deserve to get this additional $200,000 back. So rather than borrowing from some other section, let's encourage the folks in Santa Maria to help us support this $200,000 additional revenue and make this, and help them vote in approval of the sale.
There's one thing Santa Maria people like to do, it's help.
There you
There's no doubt about it, they love to help.
Stop laughing.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ogeron, for your suggestion. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item G, approval of insurance policies and premiums for 2021-2022 as presented by Hughes Insurance.
Motion, Madam Chair.
A motion by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Mason. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item H, approval to use the USDA funds to issue a task order for GSA.
Motion.
Have a motion by
Coach,
Mr. Ogeron.
Coach.
like to second.
Mr. Thomas, a second by Mr. Ogeron. Y'all speak up. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item I, approval to proceed with an EPA-required resilience and sustainability report. Mr. Ken Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is required by the EPA, which I'm our favorite partners in a lot of things that we do. If you have a treatment system that's above 3,500 customers, you're required to do a resiliency and also a risk assessment program. It's a part of the American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018.
Motion.
And so,
Second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Robert, a second by Mr. Melanson. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Dawson. Item J, approval of the Oak Grove Project wastewater treatment proposal. Who's got that one? Good evening.
Evening, how are y'all doing?
We're good. Good to see you, sir.
Good. Now nobody has to say they're on mute anymore. It's great. It's a great day. So this is our quote. This is approval for the quote for treatment of the facilities at Oak Grove. This is something that's been on our project planning for a while. With the consideration of the sewer deal, we've looked at purchasing and building, which we've gone out for quotes for, and this is our option for renting. And the total cost on it, it's $84,000 for mobilization, $21,000 a month, and $35,000 for demob. It does carry a commitment of 1 year for the rental, but given that we are already at capacity and have committed over the capacity, we feel like we need to do something in the meantime.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Melanson, second by Mr. Mason to approve. I know we have questions. Mr., who? John, did you have your hand up over there?
I was seconding.
All right, Mr. Wagasback.
Yeah, so Gavin, this is, so is this something where we can't wait till after the vote to do it, and we really need to do it now? Have we had several overflow incidents? I mean, I've heard something about this, but
We've had a lot of issues with it. We've actually, most recently, we've had it where some pumps have failed in there, and where we're kind of teetering on that line. It's a game I don't really like playing with, because we're right there next to the school, and I really don't want to be held
Right.
responsible for, having a big overflow at the school, even though we're, we're doing the best we can. We're managing it, but it's a fairly important matter.
Was this also figured in the appraisals, the,
they looked at that plan, they looked at everything.
okay, very good.
Well-
Any
So
further?
this was, so for clarification,
This was a rental. This was a rental, so that's why it wouldn't be included as part of the appraisal. The
Right.
purchase.
They looked at the old system, but not the new system. This is strictly a rental because we wanted to
Right.
cut the cost.
but I guess the question I have is,
This would
we're
come-
looking at spending, we're looking at spending $400,000, I'm guessing, on this a month before we have this election. Is there any reason why we can't table this until our meeting in May, after we get the results of this vote, so that we can determine whether or not we're going to sustain this cost or the buyer's going to sustain the cost?
Well, it's a couple of reasons. First of all, we already are under capacity for treatment, okay? Like Gavin said, we had overflow situation before. The parish has committed to bringing several other developments into that treatment system. So right now, I think we're about 8,000 gallons per day under treatment. We have an additional 30-something thousand coming from one development, and then an additional after that. So the thing is that we have to get this on board. If not, we are going to further exceed the capacity to treat waste. We tried to do the simplest way possible by going with basically a rental, so we don't have to purchase. Because initially, remember, the project was going to be 1.something million, 1.9 million to do it. So talking with administration and talking with the CAO, we said, well, how can we reduce that cost? And he suggested especially, let's do for a rental. So we went out for the rental project, but because you have to put tertiary treatment in, because you're going in to buy your man shack, the cost of the treatment system is up at $317, whatever Gavin said, and they're requiring 1 year rental.
Correct.
Okay.
So I guess that's the furtherance of my questions. We've had this issue for well over a year. I know last year I was utilities chair, and we were having this conversation on a monthly basis. You know, so at some points, administration was saying it wasn't a problem, then other days it was a problem, but I think we always knew that there was a problem at Oak Grove. I guess what I'm asking, is it imperative to take this action and spend this $300-something thousand today, less than, a little bit more than 30 days from the vote? I would tend to think all this extra capacity you just discussed, all of those houses are not going to come online in the next 30 days.
Well, that's right.
Those
But it-
houses are going to come online in the next 3 years.
No, sir. We look, the reason why we are doing it is because some of these, especially these townhomes that were developed, they're coming online now.
Okay,
They're being developed now. So the only reason why we are pushing this is because we have those things that we promised to treat are coming online now. And you're right, Councilman, that's why we talked about this a while ago, because we knew it was coming. Now we're here. And so we have to do something to treat it. And as Gavin said, well, the last thing we want is an overflow situation of sewer at a school.
certainly. Listen, I've been preaching that to a deaf choir for a year now. Okay, so I understand. I just find it disconcerting that after a year of bringing it to the attention, that we, a month before we plan on selling this operation, we're going to commit the parish's dollars, $300,000 plus, to renting equipment that we're going to be paying the rental fees for 11 months that we don't own the system.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of think that there's a flaw in that, and I would like to table this matter until after I would suggest we table this matter until after the April 24th vote.
Chairwoman,
I
can
have others, yes, there's several who want to make comments.
so two things I just want to point out.
clear it up.
We're 30 days away from the election, but we don't know when this is going to finally be transferred over. And we're about to the point where we're paying with fire. And we have done everything we can to push this down the road because nobody wanted Jim Bernhardt to pay for this more than we did. But we're at this critical point.
Right.
And the worst thing I want, Corey, is to have a major failure before April 24th.
Well, I agree.
And so, we just,
And I guess that's what I'm asking, John, is, are we at that point finally, where the eyes have been opened, and the Utilities Department administration is saying, yes, we have to spend this money to resolve this issue? And if that's the case, and if you guys are telling us that because you're the guys who are out there collecting the data for us, then that's something. But if you're hesitant on that, then I think the financially prudent thing for us to do would be to table this until after the election. And then once we get that done, we can bring it back, and I'm sure it'll be a unanimous support at that point. But that's just the question, guys. I'm done. I'll let
Thank
others
you.
speak. Thank you.
Other comments, Mr. Robert?
So we're looking at about $371,000 for the rental turnkey. Approximation, what does it cost to build something like that?
Well, our price, we were looking at 1.9 million, but that was for 60, that was for 120,000 gallon
And how many
system.
gallons is this one?
This is at 40.
Okay.
But
so
again, when
about
you
a third of
when
that.
you start dealing with rentals, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you run into. And the second thing is because tertiary treatment is required, because of Bayou Manchac and because of what's happening there, the tertiary treatment cost to get a filter to treat that is
Yeah.
very,
Now,
very expensive.
The ones that we were gonna build, you said is 120 gallons?
It was,
Or 120, yeah.
120,000 gallons, yeah.
Yeah, 120,000. So what, are they really gonna need to build one to make that compensation between that
No,
afterward?
the reason why we went with this is because we're just trying to make it until Bernhardt comes over and takes over the system and able to do what they need to do with the system. So the goal was to just get enough capacity that treat the immediate need. Now, nobody knows when the transition is going to take place and how long it's going to take to do something. Hopefully, we won't be revisiting this again because we need to do extra capacity. But the goal at this point was to look at the most cost-efficient, effective way and quick way that we can get something in, and instead of the parish having to pay $100,000 or $1 million to do it for 371, and then they can take their stuff and go, and Bernhardt can do, and NWI can do what they want to do with to treat the system in that area. Because they may not want it at Oak Grove. They may want to put it somewhere else, but it gives them that opportunity.
So I guess what my question is I'd like to tie it to where after, or if the vote goes through to pass it, that the expense would go along with the rest of it, you know, because I'm sure they're going to use it anyways. Is there a way we could do that?
I think
We'll,
it's-
we'll be glad to ask them to do that, but we're
Yeah.
not gonna go back and renegotiate this contract.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, I mean, we're looking at giving them an extra $300,000 for, because we don't want to, I mean, put it, oh no, that's a lot of money just to give them.
We're not giving
I
it to
kinda
them, we're giving it to the
agree with
company
Lori
we're
on
renting
this.
it from.
Right, we give them to the company. And at
Yeah.
that
Believe it
particular
or
point,
not.
if they still want to treat, you know, they're still gonna have to some kind of treatment. And if the transition is that they have the Oak Grove system, I'm sure they're not just gonna pull it out and let it flow on the ground. They
No,
probably work out
and I
some
don't think they are
longevity
either,
of
but if
transition.
this could be fixed in a month and we save 371,000 is still spent, just not by us. I make a motion to table it until after the election. if-
Mr. Ogeron, we're going to get that straight, Senator. Mr. Ogeron did not really actually make a motion. He
No,
made
that's
a
what I
motion.
just
I
made.
need the suggestion.
So, he just
Yeah.
made a
He's
suggestion.
making the motion.
You are making a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there a second?
I would second that.
And what is the will of this council? Cinnamon, open the voting machines. Are we going to have to do a voice? Yes, I'll let you have some more discussion too. I'm just letting Cinnamon. Okay, good enough. All right, while she's doing that, Mr. Lambert, go right ahead.
With the capability of the rental, do we have emergency generator backup with this? Or do we have backup at all right now?
Yeah. Yes, sir. What we normally have is whenever there is emergency, we have contracts with a generator company that if they need it, we can bring a generator out and hook up. It's not one that's out there all the time, but anytime that we have a need at lift stations or treatment plant that do not have power, we pre-stage generators to make sure that we're able to power.
So if, with this rental, will you have emergency capability to keep the,
Yes, sir.
Well,
Make sure it runs.
I think we've all known about this, and I'm gonna tell you, this is one, we don't need to be playing with this. This is right beside the school. There's been a number of overflows out there, and, you know, this is all on Highway 42, and it doesn't look good. So I'm not gonna hold this up. That's. I'm gonna leave
Mr.
it at that.
Melanson?
Yeah, I just like to second what Mr. Lambert was saying. I don't want to spend the $370 any more than anyone else, but at the school, it's a health and safety hazard, and I'd hate to procrastinate any longer.
Mr. Mason?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on what Mr. Lambert, Mr. Melanson said. If we did have a spill, if we had an overspill at the school, what kind of costs are we looking at for that?
Were you here when they did the last one? No. You know, when you look at.
Would it be more than $371,000?
Well, you're gonna spend a lot of money, because you gotta clean it up, you gotta disinfect it, and depends on the volume of the flow. I mean, you have a lot, not even talk about the possible interruption in traffic in school, because where that is located, if you know, it's located right next to the driveway. So I think that, and for as hard costs, you're gonna be spending a month, but even for as costs as related to the school being able to use the facility as correct.
Yeah.
Probably exceed that number.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to defer. What is the will?
Well-
You're going to,
What's the
Cinnamon? Travis? All right. It is 7 noes and 3 yeses. We'll go back to the original motion. Did we have a motion on?
We had a motion
We
and a
had a
second.
motion and a second. All right, very good. Thank y'all for helping me to recall after all this time. Are there any further questions about this? Mr. Melanson? Mr. Wagasback?
No, I was just gonna suggest that, Mr. Diaz, you know, go and make a deal with NWI to maybe consider picking this up if the vote passes. I think Mr. Diaz is warning out his welcome.
I have seen-
tonight, man, I'm just saying.
I will testify that Mr. Diaz has worn out his welcome.
Go ahead, that's all I have.
I'm happy to.
Mr. Ogeron is already in the process of doing that.
All right, very good, very good. That might make it happen. All right, so we have a motion and a second to proceed with this project. Are there any objections?
No objections.
And I object, I know it's gonna be
Thank you,
fruitless,
Mr.
but, you know, I
That's
just,
okay, Mr. Robert, that's your.
kinda like, 370,000 is a lot to me.
No, I understand. We have an objection, so Cinnamon, open those voting machines. And that vote is 9 yeses and 1 no. Thank you very much. That motion passes. Item K, approval to increased contract with Alvin Fairburn in the amount of $37,000 for engineering and technical services associated with the Oak Grove project.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Melanson.
Second.
A second by Mr. Mason. Are there any questions? Mr. Ogeron?
$37,000 for an engineer to tell a company that we're renting equipment from where to put the equipment?
No.
Is that, okay, that's not what's
That's
happening?
not what it's for.
Okay, just checking.
No, what it's actually for is, so in order to get the facility approved, it has to go through LDH and DEQ.
Okay.
Since we're renting a facility that's existing, there's no necessary drawings on it, so they have to put together the drawings, put together the whole package of how the plant's gonna work, which has already been preliminarily done. And then it will move it towards, so that way LDH will approve it and DEQ will approve it, and then we can move it on site.
Okay, and that couldn't have been part of the contract with the company that we're renting this from? Do we have to do the engineering ourselves separately?
There's two separate companies, so yes, it had to be
Okay.
separate.
Thank you.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any objections or any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item L. Approval of change order number 5 for CDBG project in Dara to add $31,303 and 88 days for adverse rain days, additional service line installation, utility. Have a motion by Mr. Turner.
Second.
Second by Mr. Melanson. Are there any questions? Mr. Melanson?
I just want to make a comment. Miss Martha is out of town, but we spoke on the phone yesterday for her to reiterate that this is still within our CBDG budget, and it is from an unforeseen issue, I believe, down Brown Road, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it's a utility relocation issue.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections?
In the same time, that same comment refers to the next line item, or
Okay.
next agenda item as well.
Very good. Any objections on item L? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Item M, approval of relocation of funds, $80,000 for MB Design for inspection services for the CDBG project.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolotti, second by Mr. Wagasback. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Now we'll go back to Mr. Robert's item that he moved, which was 7G.
And like I said, it was just a minor question. Has that work been complete?
That's approval of change order number 1,
The
Delcon
change order
LLC.
itself? Yes, ma'am.
Dean,
Whose item is that?
Mr. Dean Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, dear. Dean, Mr. Robert has a question.
Madam Chair, at this time, I'm going to be asking to excuse myself.
Thank you. I'm so glad you could stay, Mr. Avon, and take good care of yourself.
I appreciate everyone. Thank you, guys.
Hey, we're gonna make a T-shirt
Feel
for
better,
green
Court.
or something.
My only, is this project complete?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was it. Just because we were approving it for completion, extend it to February, and I know we're in March, so,
Yeah, no, it's complete.
yeah, thank you.
It just gotta go through the.
That's all, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Robert makes a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mason. Are there any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Right, item number 10, the committee recommendations. Mr. Cagnolotti is going to handle those in Mr. Ogeron's absence, and I want to let everyone know Mr. Ogeron has been suffering with COVID. He has somewhat recovered, but from my own experience, I know that you can't take a long day. And so we're glad that he was able to stay with us as long as he was, and we're glad he can get home. Thank you, Mr. Cagnolotti, for filling in for him.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. On February 22nd, 2021, Personnel Committee met and interviewed candidates for the Tourism Commission, and we recommend approval of Ms. Liz Laurent to the Tourism Commission.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolotti and a second by, oh, Mr. I can't hear y'all. I can't tell when it's that
Put my
full.
hand up so you know. it's
Somebody
me.
wave. A motion by Mr. Wagasback, a second by Mr. Mason to approve Ms. Liz Laurent for the Tourism Commission. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. I've known Ms. Laurent for many years. I can tell you she's going to be an asset to that commission. Thank you all very much for the work you did to get her there. Item B is the reappointments to Fire Protection District Number 3.
On the same night, we interviewed candidates for reappointment to Fire District Number 3, and we'd like to recommend approval of Tracy Burns.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Mason, a second by Mr. Wagasback to approve Ms. Tracy Burns. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. That's a great appointment as well.
Yeah, and we also recommend reappointment to David Commander,
Motion.
Fire
Have a
District
motion by
Number 3.
Mr. Mason.
Second.
Second by Mr. Robert. Or Mr. David Commander. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. David is an
concludes
excellent
the,
member of
Fire
that
District
commission.
Number 3.
The reappointments to the Waterway Commission.
Personnel Committee recommends reappointment of Ronald Bro.
Motion.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Lambert, a second by Mr. Mason to reappoint Mr. Ronald Bro. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Next, we recommend reappointment of Jared Mobile to Waterways Commission.
Motion.
Have a motion by Mr. Robert, a second by, where was that, Mr. Melanson, for Mr. Jared Mobile. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
And thirdly, we recommend a reappointment of John David Tompley.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Lambert, a second by Mr. Melanson to reappoint John David Tompley. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
That concludes the report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I know all those fine gentlemen too, and we appreciate their service. At this time, item number 11 is an introduction of ordinances. They only require a motion to introduce. The first item is A, introduction of ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 6, Council Procedures, to include Section 2-103, Legal Process.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Melanson to introduce.
Nope.
We're passing on item B. Moving on to item C, which is a public hearing to consider an ordinance creating a road infrastructure district designated as Parish of Ascension Road Infrastructure District Number ID 2020-03 pursuant to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-4011, approval of final plat procedure, Infrastructure Development District, Pelican Point Golf Community, Victoria Court.
Motion to open public hearing.
Have a motion by Mr. Mason to open a
Second.
public hearing with a second by Mr.
Motion to
Cagnolotti.
close.
Have no one to speak with a motion by Mr. Robert to close with a motion by Mr. Melanson. Are there, I need a motion to move the
Motion
ordinance.
to move the ordinance.
Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolotti and a second by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. Are there any objections or any questions? Hearing no objection, that motion passes. Item E, introduction of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, LDC Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Family Partition, Section 17-4026.
Motion to introduce.
I have a motion by Mr. Cagnolotti to introduce. Item F, introduction of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-4046, Sanitary Sewer Requirements.
Motion to introduce.
Motion by Mr. Mason to introduce. Item G, introduction of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, LDC, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 17-4032, Street Requirements.
Motion to introduce.
I have a motion by Mr. Robert to introduce. Item H, introduction of an ordinance to revoke an existing 15-foot drainage servitude located across Lot 2B3A of the former Samuel Christie and Lacey May Tillotson property along Samuel Tillotson Road. property as depicted on the boundary survey map of lots 2B, 2A, and 2B, 3A by Clint J. Quintmall dated July 18, 2016.
Motion to introduce.
Have a motion by Mr. Melanson to introduce. Introduction of an ordinance I, to revoke two existing 10-foot drainage servitudes running across lots 1E, 1A3, and 1E, 1A4 of the former Robert Dale Hidalgo Investment Company, LLC, property along Causey Road. Property is depicted on the survey map showing the subdivisions of Lot 1AE, 1A of the Robert Dale Hidalgo Investment Company, LLC, property into lots 1E, 1A1, 1E, 1A2, 1E, 1A3, 1E, 1A4, and 1E, 1A5, and 1E, 1A6 by Clint J. Quintmall, PLS, at instrument number 6823627 and dated October 30th, 2007.
Motion to introduce.
I have a motion by Mr. Mason to introduce. J, introduction of an ordinance, Budget Amendment 3, to amend the 2021 budget.
Motion to introduce.
A motion by Mr. Melanson to introduce. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 12, public hearing, ordinances. A, reading of an ordinance, the Budget Amendment number 2, to amend the 2021 budget. Mr. Dupatti?
Just trying to find it. It's his first day. Be nice.
There you go. Look, if all else fails, ask Cinnamon.
Yeah.
An ordinance to amend the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2021 operating and capital budgets for the parish of Ascension, adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on the 19th day of November 2020. Section 1. The Ascension Parish Council hereby ordains that the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2020 operating and capital budgets for the parish of Ascension is hereby amended, approved, and appropriated as follows. Operating budget. General Fund. To amend contract with Tyler Technologies to include EAM, Parks and Recreation, 311, and My Civic Software, as well as implementation and training services. General Administration, expenditures, professional services, $392,000. Lamar Dixon Installation Replacement Project at the Trademark Building, expenditures, major repairs, non-capital, $180,000. This ordinance having been submitted to a vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
Have a motion by Mr. Melanson with a second by Mr. Cagnolati to open a public hearing.
Motion to close.
Have a motion by Mr. Mason with a second by someone over there,
Mr. Robert.
Mr. Robert, to close the public hearing.
Motion to move the ordinance.
I have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Cagnolati and a second by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item D, reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 4, Subdivision Regulations, Section 174026, Family Partitions D2C, to repeal C, the predial servitude agreement.
Purpose, to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land District Code, Appendix 4, Subdivisions Regulations, Section 17-4026, Family Partition D2C, to repeal C, predial servitude agreement. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974, and whereas Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body over the zoning and regulations within this jurisdiction, and whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish, adopted May 4th, 1993, identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish governing authority that the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, Appendix 4, Subdivisions Regulations, Section 17-4026, Family Partition, D2C, Predial Servitude Agreement is hereby repealed. Severability. In the event that any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason
by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provisions and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full force, full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance having been submitted to a vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open a public
Have
hearing.
a motion by Mr. Cagnolati and a second by Mr. Robert to open a public hearing.
Motion to close.
Have a motion by Mr. Mason and a second by Mr. Cagnolati to close a public hearing.
Motion to move the ordinance.
Have a motion by Mr. Mason and a second by Mr. Cagnolati to move the
I would like
ordinance.
to make an amendment to the ordinance.
Chase, we had some discussion about that with legal counsel.
I think we can meet at a later time and add some new provisions to address what you want to address. But this is an illegal provision right here. This is a complete violation of the Civil Code of Procedure. So I think we can come
Yeah,
back and fix
I'm-
it.
Yeah, so we spoke today.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to keep this here in any manner. I would like us to put a check somewhere in the
Oh.
family partition procedure, whenever people realize if they have a 3-acre tract of land and if they're giving up 40 foot of their own property, their private servitude going down the side, just to make them understand that once they turn that into private or personal servitude, that all adjacent touching property owners now have the
I think
same
we-
right that they do.
I think what we'll do is I'll meet with me, Chase, and I'll prepare one to be introduced next meeting to say exactly that.
Okay.
Okay. But this here, we got to repeal this because we're going to get sued because it's illegal.
I mean, amending it wouldn't stop from repealing it.
Huh? No, the amendment, you just want, but I'll work with you on the proper language on it. That's what
Okay.
I had some questions on it.
Okay.
All right, so we had a motion and a second to move the ordinance. Are there any other questions? Mr. Wagasback.
I guess I've seen some of these before, O'Neill. Is there a way when we put these into an item to redline them so we can see what you're changing? It's
Well,
kind of
we're
hard.
repealing that whole provision. That's what we're doing
Okay.
there.
He's eliminating.
So that, you would address that question to Mr. Dupatti,
Okay. Well,
going forward.
no, it's just, it's kind of like when you amend a contract. I mean, it's hard to see what the new language is without knowing what you changed, and I'm sure I could go find it, but it'd be nice to be able to see.
Okay. It says a pretty servitude agreement is required for subsequent, and that's it's a violation of the civil code.
Yeah,
So
no,
delete
I'm not
it.
questioning that at all.
All
Just,
right.
it would just be, come up, I feel
And
like
it's-
when these come up, it's hard to follow what's being changed,
Okay.
if that's
So the
fair.
agenda it's a little odd, but the strike through is actually in the reading of the ordinance on D and not the actual ordinance F. There's
Okay.
a strike paragraph there that shows you new is underlined, old is struck through. It's just a little confusing that it's with the reading of the ordinance and not actual F.
Oh, I see it now. I see it now.
There it is.
All right, Mr. Robert.
And just to, go on to what Councilman Wagasback was saying, even if it is completely eliminating, I mean, just like this particular one, let's see from beginning to end exactly what we're eliminating, even if it's no changes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second to move the ordinance. Are there any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. And we are out of trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Not if I have anything to do with it, Madam Chair.
Item G. Reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17.5010, Construction Standards, Permits for Culverts and Bulkhead Installation.
Purpose, to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-5010, Construction Standards. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local governmental subdivision as defined by the Article 6, Section 44 of the Louisiana Constitution of 1974. And whereas Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body over the zoning and regulations within this jurisdiction. And whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish, adopted May 4th, 1993, identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish. And Now, therefore, be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-5010, Construction Standards, is amended as more fully described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part hereof. Severability, in the event that any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. And Exhibit A, Section 17-5010, Construction Standards. A, all drainage and earthwork construction shall be constructed in accordance with the Ascension Parish subdivision regulations. All temporary culverts, permanent culverts, and bulkhead installations require permit and written approval by the Department of Public Works and/or appropriate drainage district. B, permits for culvert and bulkhead installation shall be obtained according to the following policies as attached to Appendix 5, Drainage Regulations. A, bulkhead installation policy, Appendix A, and B, culvert installation, replacement, and upgrade policy, Appendix B. This ordinance having been submitted to a vote, the vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open
We
public
have a
hearing.
motion by Mr. Cagnolati and a second by Mr. Mason to open a public hearing.
Motion to close.
A motion by Mr. Mason and a second by Mr. Cagnolati to close the public hearing.
Motion to move the ordinance.
A motion by Mr. Cagnolati,
Second.
a second by Mr. Mason to move the ordinance. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mason and Mr. Cagnolati, as usual tonight, have made a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. DePatie, for your first night in Ascension Parish government.